Our theme, Excellent Beyond Time, Beautiful Beyond Borders, was chosen because for us it reflects in the best possible way our uttermost interest, what we're trying to do with this fair. For us it is extremely important in the idea of the crossover we're trying to bring over in the fair to tear down borders that might exist in our heads. These borders can be in terms of time, that you come to the fair being only interested in a certain period and then invited on a journey to the different centuries of art and design history. At the same time, borders that might exist because of a certain type of art or artistic object you come to see, and then you find other artistic expressions, other objects which could be of interest for you. So for us it's very important to say we want to open up, we want to invite people to discover new things, to discover new objects for themselves and to go beyond what is already set in their minds, what they want to see. And thus, beautiful beyond borders, excellent beyond time. The fair consists of various segments, even though I'm not too sure whether I really like the term segment. Of course, we represent different segments. At the same time, we do not really place them apart from each other. Our idea is to bring them in a context to each other. So that means we start with works from the antiques. We start with objects that are about 2,000 years old. We end with objects from the year 2000. So we cover roughly 2,000 years of art and design history. However, they're not divided into different sections. They're more or less presented together to see what kind of maybe contrasts exist, but also what kind of similarities can we see beyond, between the individual objects. The architecture at the fair is quite open for an art fair, I'd say. What we do is, of course, we have individual stands which are done by a single dealership or gallery. At the same time, we have stands which are joint presentations by different dealerships or galleries who represent completely different segments, but put them together and create a joint space where you can then discover the objects in an interplay to each other. So the architecture is quite open, it's not that closed. At the same time, obviously when you try to build a fair like this, it is very important that it is not only one segment which has, the most power over the others. So it doesn't mean that we have exactly the same amount of dealers in each segment, but that we try to see for each segment what amount of dealers would be right in order to see that it fits with the other objects. It's not, as I said, that easy to say I need 5 antiques dealers, 5 modern art dealers, 5 Asian art dealers and put them together. It's more to really see what does the object deserve, how big are the objects, what kind of object is it, what kind of also time do the objects need to interact with them, and also what kind of quality and how money is on the market right now, because that also differs between the segments. So that's a kind of game you always have to play and which takes a long time to see until it really in the end fits together. The concept does take a long time, yes. It's, I remember when I started the job, I was asked, well, then you only work 6 weeks a year. And it's definitely not that, because you take months to really choose whom do you want to invite to the fair, which segments do you want to have, how do they interact with each other. And it is a process that takes months, and then you end up and you have the dealers who want to exhibit, and then you have to see how do you place them in the context of the fair, so that we really do live up to our idea of the crossover, that we do not just say on the right-hand side you have modern art, on the left-hand side you have Asian art, but so to see that it really fits, it's quite a long process, yes. I think crossover has always existed in a sense, because people have always inherited objects and bought new objects. That's nothing which is a development of the last 10 years. I think what is new, that after a relatively long time where people were focusing more on one concept, one style, which also had to do with obviously the large destruction we had, especially in Central Europe, especially in Germany, are now going back to saying we celebrate what we inherit and combine it, we celebrate the crossover with the modern times. So on the one hand, opening up to new ideas, new artworks, new design works, and combining them maybe with pieces where we can see where they came from. Because every artwork, every design object has been developed out of a certain idea. So I think it's not that crossover is completely new. I think the celebration of crossover is a new idea. We have quite exactly the same amount as last year, which is very good. We're very happy with that. We have about 90 galleries and dealerships, including the exhibiting institutions. We are having a bit more than 100 exhibitors at the fair, which what we would say is the perfect size for this kind of fair, because it allows you to have enough time to see every kind of object at the fair. It doesn't mean that you only rush in and rush out because it's too many dealers. For example, if it would be much more, it would work against our idea of the crossover, against the invitation to really dwell through the corridors and look at new things and have time to also think about them and discover them, because when you discover something new, it's not that easy. It takes much more time, and so the amount of 100 exhibitors for us is where we say you can very well do the fair in 1 or 2 days. If you want, you of course can take longer, but not everyone has the time. So that's the idea about the size of the fair. In terms of visitors, I think we have very different groups coming to the fair. On the one hand, yes, you have, of course, I would say, more professional collectors who really have collections and are very often then looking for something specific to include in their collection, to raise the quality of the collection, to maybe find something which has been missing in the collection. At the same time, we have many people who come to the fair who have an interest in art, an interest in antiques, an interest in design, who come and are very free in their mind what they're looking for, and are wandering around, and maybe they don't buy every year, but every few years, every other year, they might find something they really like and they take it with them. So I wouldn't really call them collectors in the old-fashioned sense of having a real collection, but I would like to call them art lovers who like to be surrounded by art and antiques, who like to live with them. We have a lot of those. Of course, we have many museums who come to the fair. We have artists who come to the fair. We also invite students to come to the fair to discover it. So it's really a fair for everyone. It's the same. We do not only sell artworks for millions of euros. So you can come to the fair and find a perfectly high quality piece for a few thousand euros. All objects at the fair are vetted. All of them are guaranteed good quality, but they don't have to cost millions. We also try to attract, also with the crossover, a wider public to see what they like and maybe discover something new, but also something which would be in their means to buy. We don't want to exclude and say we only want the super collectors and the millionaires at the fair, because I think that is a concept that doesn't work, especially not in this era where we are in the Rhineland, which has still the highest density of collections in Europe, or one of the highest densities, but collections again in a very wide sense, not all of them big collections. And I think we need to do something which is attractive for people who love art and like to be surrounded by it. So one of the special shows we're doing this year at the fair, it's called Style Icons. It's not the first time that we're doing a special show at the fair. It has been done before, where we've worked with several institutions or museums, trying to bring a theme to the fair and combine an exhibition which is not for sale with, of course, the sales platform which an art fair is in the end, but also to maybe put a focus on a certain theme. So this year, one of these shows is Style Icons, where we play a bit with the idea of, again, boundaries and tearing down boundaries of the question, what is art, what is design, what is just a normal object. So we are bringing in 5 very exceptional cars dating from the 20s to the 60s. For example, a fantastic Bugatti Van Voren. We have then again from the 60s a Chrysler Gia, which was customized for Dean Martin, a style icon in itself. And we combine these objects with fashion, with accessories from the time, to invite people to say, well, maybe one could see them as only being objects of just everyday life, but on the other hand, we allow the term design for so many other things, and those are pieces which were designed by high-class designers. Those are not just mass production objects. And so we want to just raise the question and again tear down a bit the borders and see what people can make of it, what they think of it. And I think it's a development which is very, very interesting. When we look at museums, we look at auction houses, it's there already, and we want to bring it also to raise it in the context of an art fair and to say, is it not that those objects can also be seen as art or design? The Young Dealers is an invention of this year. The idea behind the Young Dealers is, maybe we shouldn't call them Young Dealers. Young dealerships, young galleries is, I think, the better term, but Young Dealers sounds better. Young Dealers aims at young dealerships, young galleries who are starting in the art market. We all know that the first years running such a business is quite hard, and what we would like to do is to give these young dealers an opportunity to already take part in a renowned, very good art fair in order for them to learn this environment, to meet collectors, to publish what they do, to really present themselves. As this is usually obviously combined with a certain cost, it's not always possible for young dealers to do this. So we invented this program where we financially support the dealers. They get stands at a very, very good price to invite them to come to the fair without being bankrupt afterwards, because that's not the idea. Our point is always we take a long-term approach to things. And for me, I support them now and I help them to build up their business so that the whole art market and thus also our fair can profit from it. I think it's very, very important in those days to support this kind of development, because not many people are willing to take this risk to start a dealership. And so this is why we invented Young Dealers. The Cologne Fine Art Prize is a prize which is done together by Köln Messe and by the BVDG, the Bundesverband Deutscher Galerien und Kunsthändler. And the idea is to honor an artist for his work, for his life work. So this year the prize goes to Jürgen Klauke. We are very excited that he accepted this honor. This year's fair, I think, is going to be very, very interesting. In terms of the dealers, we have again achieved a very, very good mixture, a very balanced mixture between the different segments. At the same time, I think it's very interesting, as we are the first as an art fair to raise this question about the boundaries of art, design and everyday piece we live with. I think so that's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be exciting. I think it's also going to obviously raise questions and discussion, which is what we want. We don't want it to be too easy. I'm very excited about Jürgen Klauke. I think it's going to be a wonderful exhibition he's doing. And also I think with the young dealers to bring in this young approach to exhibiting at an art fair, I think is also going to be one of the very interesting things at the fair.